Alrighty, party peoples of the interwebs, it's your daily dose of the Trump, the summary of day 6 now of the New York State Alvin Bragg, Juan Marchand, Stormy Daniels, hush money payment, election interference, bogus persecution. It's day 2 now substantively of the trial. Yesterday they had opening arguments and they started with their first witness, David Pecker, who was the CEO of AMI, the company that owned the National Enquirer. They briefly started with him yesterday, but lasted a few minutes. It's Passover. Apparently one of the jurors had a dentist appointment, so they called it quits early yesterday. And today was an equally short day. They called it quits at about 2 o'clock because of Passover. And they also got started late, I think at 11, because the judge Juan Marchand was dealing with allegations that Trump is in violation of the gag order, contempt charges, and Trump was answering why he is not in contempt of Juan Marchand's gag order. And yes, even the prosecution was calling it a gag order. Everybody should be watching this. I mean, in as much as you can watch it, because you can't watch it because they're not televising it, but follow Inner City Press for basically like a real-time transcription of the hearing. They were in front of Judge Juan Marchand this morning, and the issue of the day was whether or not Trump violated the gag order. They're calling it a gag order, gagging a defendant in the context of a persecution, gagging Donald Trump, the presumptive nominee for the GOP, in the context of an election season, gagging him so that he cannot make statements, attacking the witnesses, Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen, both of whom are taking to Twitter on a daily basis to troll Donald Trump. I think Michael Cohen just called him like Mr. Stinky Pants or something along those lines. Both of these star witnesses, a confirmed liar porn star Stormy Daniels and a convicted perjurer, according to Justice Arthur Engeron himself, Michael Cohen. Convicted perjurer, porn star, they can take to podcasts to insult and attack Trump all day long. They can take to Twitter to attack Donald Trump all day long. But he goes out on Twitter and calls Michael Cohen a sleazebag, suggests that Stormy Daniels might have been concealing that little NDA, that document, not the NDA, but the document that confirms that she never had a relationship with Donald Trump, and if she didn't sign that document in virtue of an NDA, she denied the relationship because it never happened. He posted that and said, will the fake news cover this? That's one allegation of Trump being in violation of Juan Marchand's unconstitutional, unlawful election interference gag order, in my humble opinion. Judge Juan Marchand was giving it to the defense today. Like really, from what it sounds, in Matthew Russell Lee, Inner City Press's coverage, the judge was basically giving it to Attorney Blanche, Trump's attorney, saying, you don't think that when he quote tweeted or tweeted the quote from Jesse Waters, when he was saying that there were activists that were making their way onto the jury, that's not somehow appropriated into his speech? You don't think that when he tweeted the quote from Jesse Waters, he was violating my gag order? And then Judge Juan Marchand actually suggested that all Trump would have to do is submit to the judge Truth Social posts, social media posts, so that Judge Juan Marchand can say what he can and cannot say in his own defense on the public forums. Judge Juan Marchand actually suggested all he had to do is let me know what he intends to tweet or truth, and I'll tell him if it's in violation of my gag order. This is what's going on in New York. It's straight up communism. I mean, people have to understand it. It's straight up communism. This persecution is rubbish from the get-go. It's rubbish in that the feds investigated the alleged election interference, federal election law violations, and said, no, we're not going to do anything about it. It's bogus in that other prosecutors said, we're not doing anything about this. You only get George Soros's funded Alvin Bragg, who comes in and says, yeah, I'm corrupt enough to actually bring these charges. Then you have Colangelo, who is in deep with the Biden administration prosecuting this case, and they bring it. And that's not the beginning of the injustice. I mean, it goes on, and that is the beginning of the injustice. It's not the end of the injustice. It's merely the beginning. They bring this bogus charge in the year of the election cycle when they've been sitting on these allegations since 2017, give or take. They don't take it up until they find a corrupt enough DA to do it. And then they bring it up in the year of the election so they can bog down Trump for 6 weeks of criminal trial. That's not the end of it, though. Then you get Juan Marchand, whose daughter is a VP or an executive at this PR firm, I forget what it's called, Authentic something or other, where she's making money hand over fist via this prosecution by raising money for Adam Schiff, one of her clients or one of the company clients, a political action committee related to the Democrats. She worked with the Kamala Harris campaign. Trump is gagged from bringing this up and bringing it to the awareness of the social medias of the world. That's part of the gag order. So he gets brought up on these bogus charges. He gets a judge who has personal family investment in this prosecution to gag him and then bring him say, you didn't think that when you quote tweeted Jesse Waters, you made those words yours as much as you said them yourself. That's actually the argument. And by the way, that was the argument raised by, I forget which hack journalist, put out a tweet the other day and said, when Trump said these words, even though he's quoting Jesse Waters from Fox News, he made them his own. He violated the gag order. This is what we're getting comfortable with by way of an American justice system. It's communism. And Marchand said at one point, well, you just said you're just quote tweeting it. Here's an analogy, an imperfect analogy, so why even use it when you have a perfect example, as I always say? But he says, you just pick up a sign. You didn't write the sign, but you just pick up and parade around with a sign. Well, that's a little bit different than quoting a journalist. Insofar as Trump is not offering any information of his own, he is merely reciting to the public what Jesse Waters has already said as a journalist. It's wild. So they had that. It doesn't look good for Trump. I mean, it looks like Juan Marchand really wants to jail Trump, but he really wants to jail Trump. I'm quoting Phil Holloway in one of his tweets. Like, Juan Marchand really wants to jail Trump. He knows that he can't do it, but he really wants to jail Trump. So they'll come in with fines like they did in the New York nipple Judge Engoron case, inspiring himself from Judge Chutkan's corruption. They'll gag him, they'll fine him, they'll threaten him with jail, and they might very well put him in jail because Juan Marchand really wants to put him in jail. But they're entertaining discussion that you cannot quote a journalist on social media because you've been gagged while you are being gagged in a context of a 6-week prosecution in the context of an election season, while $175 million is being tied up in the other equally corrupt New York prosecution before New York nipple Judge Engoron. So that's what they did this morning. From what I understand, the judge is deliberating. I think he'll render judgment tomorrow on the 24th, as of the time of shooting this. And then they had David Pecker. Unfortunate name. My goodness, a lot of these unfortunate names. But I actually knew a Pecker growing up as a kid. It's not that uncommon of a name. But he was the CEO of AMI, which owned National Enquirer. And they're basically getting him now to talk about the catch and kill election interference schemes that they allege is this conspiracy in this case. Remember, in opening arguments, they alleged conspiracy, even though conspiracy is nowhere in the indictment. The conspiracy consists of Trump allegedly paying for favorable coverage, for attacks on his political opponents, and having someone be the eyes and ears on the ground of the campaign. That's the conspiracy for election interference, also known as election campaigning. And so they got Pecker, who was in charge of editorial decisions, what they would run, what they wouldn't run, catch and kill stories, Karen McDougal. They were talking about a story today where they paid this guy for his silence, even though they knew the story that Trump fathered a child out of wedlock. Even though they knew the story was false, they still paid him for his silence because they wanted to prevent negative coverage or him going to another agency to sell the story, even though it was false. They're talking about the Karen McDougal situation where they paid for a story so that they wouldn't run it. And they call that a catch and kill in the industry. Catch as in, we bought the rights to the story and nobody else except for us can publish it, and we're not going to publish it, so it'll never see the light of day. Not election interference, by the way. Just so everybody should understand that. Not conspiracy to do anything illegal. And bear in mind, they brought this up to the level of a federal felony because it was otherwise just a misdemeanor falsifying of records or mislabeling things in a ledger. They brought it up to a felony on the basis that he was conspiring to conceal a federal election crime. Remember, all of this relates to several entries in a book that checked the ledgers of a company where he was writing this $35,000 a month to Cohen as a legal expense, where Cohen, the convicted perjurer, according to Arthur Engoron, says it was actually a hush money payment illegal to influence elections, as if the catch and kill is election interference, which it isn't. And by the way, just so everybody understands, you're going to say that the Hunter Biden story was a catch and kill as well, when intelligence was spreading disinformation that it was Russian propaganda or bore the earmarks of Russian propaganda. That wasn't a catch and kill. What that was actually intelligence, government, conspiring with, coercing social media to suppress the truth once it had already been published by an agency that acquired the story, did the due diligence, did the research, and then published it. So that wasn't a catch and kill. That was actually government interfering and coercing private enterprise to suppress a story on the basis of whatever they did. Threats, coercion, planting the seed that it was Russian disinformation or bore the earmarks of Russian disinformation, signing that letter with intelligence officers saying it was Russian disinformation. That's actual election interference. That's not actual catch and kill. That is actual election interference, but nobody's on trial for that. Trump is on trial. 37 charges, felony indictment, because 6 years after the fact, they decide to make this a case in the election season. So Pecker testified. They didn't really get much into it. They're going to get into the Karen McDougal story, I presume, in more detail tomorrow. Then they're going to get into the Stormy Daniels. But they're laying the groundwork that what is ordinary politics in a campaign season is somehow criminal conspiracy when it's your political adversaries trying to get out good information, bring up bad information on your rivals, and have eyes and ears on the ground. Catch and kill has been around forever. It's never been a crime because it's not a crime. But they're making it a crime now because they want Trump at all costs. We'll see if Trump goes to jail on the contempt. I don't think he will. He'll get a final warning and some heavy sanctions, fines. But this is going to hit the fan sooner than later because Trump is not going to shut up. He should not shut up. And he needs to let the world what the hell is going on in commie New York, because it's out of control. And even if you hate Trump and you want to see the Democrats win, you need to understand this is commie level tyranny. Out of control, and you need to oppose it. And if you don't oppose it, it's because you have no principles. There, I said it. Okay, I've been waiting out here. I see my kid playing in a park, and I'm going to go back to being a father. That's the daily dose of the Trump update. Day 6 of the trial. Stay tuned for more. Matthew Russell Lee, Inner City Press, is following it on Twitter. Sorry about the lighting if it actually looks terrible. Oh, it's going to be lighting on my face. Whatever. Done is better than perfect. Enjoy. Now you know. Peace out, peeps. Booyah.